Okay, let me know when we live. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight. I'd like to call the meeting to order and start with a roll call to establish quorum. Joe.
Here.
Corby.
Here.
Jen. Here. John.
Here.
Juan Carlos.
Here.
And Nicole.
Here.
Nicole is here remotely. I'm here as well. We officially have a quorum. Thank you so much. Nicole, has the meeting been properly noticed?
It has.
Thank you. Corby, could you start us off with our equity framework?
Sure. In the Verona Area School District, our mission is that each student will acquire the knowledge and skills necessary to achieve their personal goals, thrive in a diverse global society, and lead a healthy, self-fulfilling life. To meet this mission, the Verona Area School District will ensure that every individual has access to the educational, social, and emotional support they need to feel valued and affirmed in their unique identities and experiences. We acknowledge that inequities and power dynamics exist in our system, such that some individuals, on the basis of their identities, face barriers to accessing the opportunities they need to experience success. In acknowledgement of such, the Verona Area School District is committed to disrupting these systems of inequity.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to adopt tonight's agenda? Are there any questions? Motion from John, is there a second? Second from Jen. All in favor, signify with aye. Aye. Tonight's agenda has been officially adopted. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Clarity for the superintendent's report.
Hi, good afternoon, evening, everyone. We're going to jump right into our presentations with a administrative rule that we would like to present to the Board of Education for the knowledge of the board and the knowledge of our community. There'll be rule number 471, which is student internet safety and appropriate use of technology rules. Here in the presentation will be Dr. Hawkins and our Director of Technology, Mr. Jason Rubio, who just also had birthday.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm glad to be here tonight. I want to recognize that we have Rita Mortensen, one of our ETPs in the audience today. And she's here, one, to hear what we're presenting, but also in support of AI. And the fact that I would be remiss if I didn't share, we've been doing some things called lunch and learns. And today, we had a lunch and learn on artificial intelligence. So it's just nice that she could be with us. But today, as Dr. Clarity said, we have J.C. Wells, Director of Technology and Digital Learning. And so he will go over the changes that we made specific to Rule 471 and 471P.
So as you can see, the changes on the two documents are in red. So this was something that the last time this was updated was in 2016. So we just wanted to kind of go through and make some little changes to it. You can see that first under number 5 under the general section, that'll be that first full paragraph on the back of the first page. The use of AI technology in the Verona Area School District must comply with the district's acceptable use policy. AI technology can be a resource for enhancing learning and teaching experiences, but it must be used responsibly and ethically. Students, teachers, and staff members must ensure that any AI systems that are age appropriate and that they do not violate the privacy of other individuals. The use of AI for academic purposes should align with the district's curriculum and instructional goals. Additionally, students, teachers, and staff must use AI tools responsibly, avoiding any form of plagiarism or cheating. Failure to follow these guidelines may result in disciplinary action. By following these guidelines, we can ensure that AI technology is used appropriately and safely within the Verona Area School District. Obviously AI has been kind of a hot topic, and we wanted to make sure that we had something in our technology AUP, as opposed to just having, just some language possibly around plagiarism, just because we wanted to make sure we have on there that if it's being used, it should be used responsibly.
Additionally, we're in the process of aligning our progressive response document to make sure that it supports and aligns with academic integrity, academic expectations. It should be noted that we realize that we are teaching children, preparing them for jobs that don't exist. And so to be ignorant and absent of helping them understand how to use this responsibly would be a disservice. So we would not be serving it as well. So again, we're approaching it knowing that it's here. We're all using it indiscriminately as it is, and so teaching our staff how to use it, preparing them, as I said today, there was professional development. You will hear more about professional development that we will be extending to our staff so that they will have an opportunity to use it as a way to efficiently and effectively plan instruction.
Yeah, and as Dr. Hawkins said, this is, and the quote always surrounded AI is, this is the worst AI will ever be. Because every day it's getting bigger and better, and you're really starting to see a lot more ed tech companies incorporating it into their apps. Google with their version of their ChatGPT is kind of the gold standard, if you will, but Grammarly has now Grammarly Go, which is included in their premium licensing, which adds AI to your writing to kind of help you write out things, as opposed to just it being, I want it to be cheerful, right? And it kind of adjusting the text you wrote. So it's only going to get more and more infused within technology, but specifically for us, the ed tech world.
So as a district, we wanted to take a stance, because sometimes when there are, I say, significant societal shifts, it's almost as if you're being truly asked to pick one or the other. And that's not the direction we're looking to go. We understand that advancements in technology have happened throughout history. You think about, I'm trying to age-drop anyone here, but we all probably were pre-internet, and people thought the world was going to come to an end, and now we can't run a meeting without the internet. With social media, we just heard from our parents and our families that is the number one way that they want to be communicated with, is through our social media, our resources. Now, as you think about AI or artificial intelligence, our stance is to teach appropriate and responsible use and allow it to be used as a resource that it's meant to be. We want to also make a very clear statement that we still honor, cherish, and are promoting student intelligence and don't want that replaced with artificial intelligence. But we do know that you can develop student intelligence when you're with additional resources to help students on that journey. When used appropriately, and we think about aligning with our mission, what better way to have guidance and resources to truly understand our diverse global society than to have some resources right in front of you to go on that journey with. So, we don't look at it as a replacement. We don't look at it as something that we should block at every turn. We do think of this as something we should understand, know how to use, because students will access it. I believe as we talked a little bit this morning, and just confirmed that some of the accounts are still 18 and above, so we're not saying, well, create an account for every student. That's not what we're doing. And we also know that the students are very resourceful and will access it when, because they're oftentimes more taking on sound than many of us. So we're, again, we feel like wholeheartedly we should teach appropriate use. And as we learned today in our great session, Rita, thank you so much for a phenomenal presentation, along with Jason today, to many of our staff, that it is a resource that can be used to help our work streams become more efficient, but it's not a replacement. So at the time, is there anything else from our presenters?
Just for 7.p.
Got it.
Specific to student internet safety, specific to exhibit 4, the additional paragraph C, acknowledges that the district technology devices need to be returned with all accessories in good working condition. And I don't want Jason to go into many devices we get sometimes without ports, but we want to make sure that we receive all of our devices with cords so that when you go to resell them for that reason, but more importantly, making sure that as we're being responsible with our resources, that we are asking our parents and helping them realize their responsibility and making sure, as well as our staff, making sure they return our resources back the way.
Was there anything that, oh. Was there anything you wanted to voice about the second edition in Rule 471? There was another paragraph added about parental role and responsibilities.
Yes.
Just to make sure if there was something else you wanted to give us voice.
Yeah, so we wanted to make sure, under the parental role and responsibilities, we wanted to ensure that obviously when the students are at home, although these devices are district issued, that families do have the ability to set those limits, whether it is through our current filter with securely home, or simply taking the device away from them during certain time periods, not letting it be charged in their bedroom. So just setting a clear guideline and expectation that parents, when it comes to the responsibility of the devices as well, that they're able to set those limits, and we're encouraging them to set those limits.
Is there anything within that specific piece that connects to, let's say, a student account on an app or something that's used through a school email account through a non-school device at home? Is that a piece that's encapsulated this at all in terms of that?
Yeah, so obviously with anything that's done on a school issued device is one thing, but if it's also a school issued email, right? That's still student data. So it's just obviously ensuring that, the responsibility is with that as well. It's not just the device.
Nicole, did you still have a question?
Yes, sorry, I had a quick question on AI. Are we implementing any AI detection tools or not at this time?
Currently this time, we don't have anything implemented yet. I know a lot of them tend to be tied around a lot of the just basic plagiarism apps. It is something that we are currently looking at with our LMS system, Canvas.
However, through PD, it can help teachers and staff know, you can put a student's work in ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to say, was this generated by ChatGPT? So while we don't have the detectors, we're certainly helping our staff understand how to use that tool to detect plagiarism. But more importantly, speaking to our students and helping them understand academic integrity and what our expectations are, the same as we would do with any type of learning. Like, this is what we expect.
Yeah, and with the PD, obviously we offered today that was available for 12-month employees, just because it was something that they had really been asking for this, because a lot of times during the school year, especially our secretaries or HR department, they have a hard time meeting for a lot of the PDs that we're offering. So we did these summer sessions, but we have a whole PD calendar already set for the year that we're going to be offering. And we have one already set up for AI in education that first half of the school year. And that's going to kind of really focus on AI in the educational world, but also obviously ways that they can use it in their personal lives. That's the thing we always try with PD is it's not just ways you can use it here, it's ways you can use it outside of the classroom and in your personal life.
Well, thank you so much.
Are there any other policies that more specifically define what plagiarism looks like in the AI world? Because when I think about it, AI is so new and different, it doesn't fit neatly into what you might traditionally think of or how you might traditionally define plagiarism. And like you mentioned, Jason, these apps that say make it more cheerful, is that plagiarism?
Yeah.
And if it's not, where's the line? And because I think we want to make sure we're giving clear direction to the users of it, to the students, that they're not accidentally running afoul of it and that they are using it in an appropriate way. How do we find that and tell them?
Well, and actually, I was just speaking to actually Dr. Jackson about this, just because depending on how you have plagiarism defined, right? If it's just I am using someone else's work and claiming it as my own, well, is AI considered someone else? So I really think it goes into how we define what plagiarism is. And I know Dr. Jackson has that language already where we're also tying in materials which that encompass AI into that, and she specifically does mention AI as well in that.
Perfect, that was exactly my question.
Silly question. Any apps that the student tries to install, only an admin can install those apps on the device?
Yes, so with our management system, they only have access to the apps that we approve. So they get kind of think of like a modified app store.
Cool.
So they don't have access to any of those, but a lot of them, like ChatGPT, is one that is web-based, so it's not an app. That is one of the ones that actually is not an 18 over, is one that you are able to use from 13 to 17. It does similar to the social media platform where, they ask for your birthday. When you put that in, if you are 13 to 17, it asks for a parent's email, so that then they can confirm that they're okay with you using that.
I have a question. How are parents typically notified if there's like a change in this, in the mission around AI or expectation around more responsibilities? Is this something that's sent to email saying, hey, here's what you can buy as a mission? And if you got, if you was going to set, there's this thing for that. And D is, if it does, you're thinking of sending out, but you are at least enough best practices, some parents make on the website. So maybe they'll hey, this is the school. Making it.
Yeah, so and all of this is obviously in our acceptable use policy, which you hope they read every time when they register. But when it comes to like best practices, this past year, we had an email that was sent out to parents from me about securely home, letting them know, I don't know if you do this, but you could go on and monitor what your child is doing while they're at home on the device. So that is going to be something that we are sending out to just make parents aware of. This is how you set up. This is how you navigate the app. So that would be sent out just for an update, just letting them know if there's been any changes to it. And then, like I said, with the AUP, all of this is on that.
Any questions from the board?
Thank you all.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, so I'm gonna do a little flop in the agenda. I know you already stood up, but we're gonna keep with academic services and to keep all that continuity together, and then this business presentation into closed session.
So tonight I have the privilege of sharing with you all R224, health and physical education. And so what this says, the BSD Board of Education values student learning, get that paragraph, and go to the second paragraph. You all expect all students will have an access or will be able to access a variety of developmentally appropriate, sequentially designed physical education courses in co-curricular experiences for the continued development of students' physical literacy as well as health and safety skills and knowledge. And so this particular policy had few indicators, but it was specific to the increase of our students being enrolled in elective health and physical education courses. So we met that, and so the electives would be okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I was watching everyone's face and I saw your eye go up and I was like, wait a minute, what's that this? Indicator 1A. So again, increasing the percentage of students enrolled in elective health, and physical education courses. There was an increase. Indicator 1A, the percentage of focused students enrolled in elective health and physical education courses. Part of this, when we think about increasing 1A, our focus students is the awareness, helping our students understand that you can take soccer, that you can do some of the other things that some of our students may not traditionally engage in. And so then indicator 2, this was specific to elementary, and this specifically states that we will meet BPI's requirements. And so the links that you show The links that are shown are specific to the PE units and learning expectations. And as you read through these, you will see just the wide variety of offerings that we even offer in our elementary PE world. Social, our bicycling unit, all of these are things that we offer to our students under the guise of PE. In that area, we are in line with the instructional requirements as set by DPI. Those are the 3 indicators for PE. What questions might you have for me as it relates to this policy?
I was just curious, I'd be interested to see what some of the elective courses are. And I mean, right, that doesn't change anything about the indicator information, but you know, I'd even be curious if we wanted to dig into weeds, what seems to be of highest interest among the elective PE classes. Just curious kind of what it looks like beyond the quantitative.
I certainly can, I can get that for you. I don't have it
Well,
right
and we
here.
could probably look at the online course perspectives and
The team presented the board with the course perspective, maybe 3 meetings ago. So that's the exact one that was done digitally for the board to use to dig into any selections that, or any content that we are offering at that device. So.
Any other questions from the board?
I just had a question. I noticed in the interpretation, really out of physical education electives and co-curricular activities. And then in our indicators, there didn't seem to be any data around co-curricular activities specifically. I'm thinking along the lines of like sports. They're active, they're often during middle school and high school. And I'm wondering, are we capturing anything around that and including that? And this or is this should focus on the PE curriculum specifically?
So you're asking the results, does the indicator capture the co-curricular?
Yes.
So I would say when we approved the indicators, we were okay with these being just the indicators that we were interested in looking at. But I think we have a workshop that we're trying to get scheduled. This is a plug. Everybody can check in their email and responding to Lori about the dates you're available for that workshop by the end of the meeting. And then we, but then this is where we had a chance to maybe take a look at some of the indicators that we have and make sure that we're getting all of the information now that we've gone through a full monitoring cycle. Would you, Dr. Clardy, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, and just also just for clarification, the sports are not co-curriculars, sports are extracurriculars. Our co-curriculars are classes that are done outside of class that are also for class credit as well, like our band music. That if you go like a band class and then also do band concert, that's a co-curricular.
And Jim, just to, you know, we were asking about interest, what I can tell you is that because of the overwhelming interest, we did add for additional sections of physical education classes, based on student requests. So, we can dig in and find out which ones were the most popular, but we definitely saw an increase. And so we adjusted the schedule to meet student demand by adding 4 additional sections. Thank you.
Is there any desire for the board to step out of the superintendent to take more action on health and physical education?
Yeah, let's go ahead. I think the board can do this from here. So we now had a chance to ask any questions. Are there any questions that the board wants to address about whether or not we have achieved reasonable progress with this monitoring report? Okay, is there a motion to approve the monitoring report as presented? Motion from Joe. Is there a second? There is a second from Juan Carlos. Are we ready to take a vote? All in favor of approving as presented, signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Monitoring report has been approved as presented. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thanks, board.
And we can now go back into the superintendent's report. Apparently you don't get to leave tonight.
Next we'll move to D. For results, a request to the Board of Education to adjust two monitoring report presentations to August 21st. Those would be R3 for well-being and R4 members of the Delaware Global Society.
And as Dr. Clardy suggested, the calendar move would be to support making sure that we are addressing these results policies in the school year. Currently, the way it stands, they are situated in September. We will have started school and we would still be addressing things that happened last year. So our request for this year is to move them to August 21st. And as President Christensen said at the board workshop, we will also make some recommendations on addressing the placement of some other results policies in a better calendar.
Sounds good. If we can go ahead and take a board vote, is there a motion to move monitoring reports as requested? Motion from John, is there a second?
Second.
Second from Joe. All in favor, signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Monitoring reports will be moved to August 21st. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Hopkins. Please give also records to your team for their great work on these. I know we have some taking vacations right now. Well deserved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Robbie, you want to stay after the budget?
Please, we'll join you. However, I do think you all are gonna parlay this in the closed session, correct?
Yeah.
I received that. I received an invite to that.
Thank you. It's a beautiful day. Academic services, you can go. It's like a 30-second window for a game. You said, okay. All right, thank you for indulging us with the monitoring reports. Now we'd like to switch over to budget finance. Given some of the information from the great state of Wisconsin, we want to just provide some updates on the impacts on our for the Verona School District and our process moving forward.
Thanks, Dr. Clardy. To follow up on that, we had worked with the board from the first of the year, all the way to today, building in some what we call budget assumptions, both around this upcoming fiscal year and continue to look at a 5-year model in terms of how that played out. And Pete and I continue to remind all of you that at least for the next 2 or 3 years, we're in a really good position, that we don't have super critical budget decisions to make that look perfectly tied to what happened at the Capitol. But we had a close eye on what happened at the Capitol because it does have an impact on where we sit 3, 4, 5 years. And that's really what we want to play out with the board tonight to see if they got any questions in terms of the past state budget. Pete and I went through and just pulled some highlights out to make sure the board had talking points around what that looked like. We have a refreshed 5-year forecast. The fiscal year 24, the one we're going to pass in October, is updated with some new assumptions. And there's a chance what you see in the budget book that all of you will receive here in a matter of a couple of weeks ahead of the annual meeting. We'll have many of the assumptions built into that 5-year. So certainly this is a very short slide deck and in terms of an update, but Pete and I are here to answer questions if the board has any. So you did go through and just pull out what we consider to be the 8 biggest highlights or points that came out of the 2-year budget that passed at the state. And I'm just going to go through these and certainly stop if you've got questions. Some of these have much more of an impact on our budget than others. So number one, the next 2 years, potentially in perpetuity, that'll be what we'll talk about at the end here. All districts will receive an additional $325 in per pupil revenue. As a reminder, revenue limit is what the permission that the state gives us in terms of annual spending. That spending comes from 2 revenue sources primarily. What the state provides
and what our local taxpayers provide. In essence, our $19 million referendum was a huge state budget in 1 year, where we get additional revenue authority, we figure out what we get from state aid, and the rest is passed on to local property taxpayers. This number was a little higher than Pete and I had assumed. We'll get into that on the next slides. Next, per pupil aid remained at $742 per pupil. We thought that was going to bump up just a little bit. That aid number is simply how many students do you have multiplied by 742. So that number stayed the same, flat, no new aid in per pupil. Three, and this was just built in the budget, aid estimates have been released, and I actually trust Pete more than what we get from the state in terms of taking a guess on what we're going to get from state aid in October. Pete will get into that a little bit later. There is a new pinpointed funding source around mental health. And that is $25 million statewide, distributed on a per pupil basis. We've heard numbers like $33 per student, which means about $180,000 on an annual basis. We are still, and Pete just did some more teasing out of this today with other local business directors. There's still not a ton of information on this mechanism. One of the biggest things that Pete's heard conflicting stories on, there is a chance some existing grants dedicated to mental health that we leverage could be sunsetting, and this could be sliding in, at least for some of it, into its place, or this could be only money. So more to come there, but that'll have about $180,000 impact in our district if it turns out to be $32 or $33 per pupil. Number 5, special education aid. A reminder, this is, we put money we spend on special education, we tab it to Fund 29. At the end of the year, we turn over our Fund 29 books to the state of Wisconsin, and they reimburse us at a certain percentage. We had guessed it was going to be 32, 34. State came in at 33.3% for the next 2 years. So kind of a win and kind of a loss in terms of what that looks like. Next one we can gloss over. We do have some high cost transportation that we do submit to the state of Wisconsin that will have a minimal budget impact on the school district. We also have high cost transportation in the form of the 12-mile category. So there are a few students that live outside the 12-mile bubble on a round trip that we get reimbursed for that as well. But again, that will be minimum. Number 8, TBOS was doing backflips to see this. So library school aids will increase, and I think our district does an amazing job spending money dedicated to our library and media centers. And Teresa Voss manages that account. And we work with her on an annual basis. She already has at least starting gate that Pete and I provided for her to start already in this upcoming school year. And the last one, and I want to answer questions if you all have them. And I'm sure you guys saw this. The governor got incredibly tricky with the needle thing. And I think there's only a few states that allow this type of kind of governor discretion when he finally signs the budget, where he went and X'd his way through with a red pen to change the 2023, 24, and 24, 25 budgets, X'd out some 2s and some 0s, and all of a sudden the legislation changed that for the next 400 years, there will be a $325 per pupil revenue. You will see on our 5-year forecast that we have not built that in. We'll see how that plays out. There's already talks of the governor being sued for overstepping his rights in terms of the veto pen. But we thought we'd include that in case you get questions around that. I would say that it only takes a state law to be passed to reverse what had happened. So I would guess that at some point that has important. Questions on the state budget summary at all? Pete and I are going to walk through impacts it has had us locally here in the next few slides. So we did 2 summary slides.
One, and this was after the feedback we got from Joe, which I thought was really good. So the first one we did was this, we just took and actually built in what we had in the 22-23 fiscal year. And then teased this through what we had built into our working assumptions in terms of the budget. And you can see there, we have revenue limit at $200, a slight increase in a per pupil category, as I mentioned, special ed, I think we got darn close on that, and the APOT. So the overall APOT is the money the state sets aside to help to help offset property taxes, essentially. And that is equalized aid. And Pete's going to get into that in a couple slides here on what that means for us. We were, I guess, cautious on our working assumptions. The aid numbers came in better than we expected to be able for more. But again, that overall APOT in terms of $225 million in the 24-25 fiscal year, that is spread out around the state, and districts who spend less and have less property value get more aid. A school district like Hawaii, they are completely aided 100% of the equalization formula. None of their property taxes go from the schools. A school district like Managua in Woodruff, that has less any students and is incredibly property rich, they don't get any state. And we're somewhere in the, we're negatively aided because we spend more than the average district and our properties more than the average district, and people are going to do more details on that. And then open enrollment in and out went up a little bit more than we thought. And the next slide does tease that out in terms of budget impact. So I'll just walk you through that quickly. The revenue limit, and I'm hoping I am pounding this idea home to the school board. This is essentially Fund 10 revenue that we have planned. We have $19 million that passed last year that is built into our base budget. What this does is it means down the road, 3 or 4 years, when we've used up the $19 million in additional revenue authority from the referendum, we have some money left over. Because we picked up $325 a student for the next 2 years. So this isn't new money necessarily. It's new money that we can manage in terms of revenue commission. And it does mean after 2 years, $1.4 million of additional revenue authority down the road. State aid came in, as we said before, a little bit, per pupil aid came in a little bit under what Pete and I had projected. And that's teased out on that line. So 2 years down the road, it's about $181,000 budget hit. Equalization aid, and Pete was sharing with me today, these still might be conservative, that in terms of where we finish up with spending this year. And Pete and his team just handed in and did a balance check today with our auditors. And we actually expect the APOT to be a little more favorable for our district by the time we hand the budget over to you here in August. And we actually expect it to be hopefully a little bit better by the time we pass the budget in October. A reminder, chart 1 and chart 3 are incredibly interconnected. If we get less aid, more money has to be passed to local property taxpayers. And what happens there is it starts to eat up what happens with our revenue commission related to the referendum. So aid is a really good thing for us in terms of managing tax. It gives us a few more tools on the road. And lastly, with special ed, which I mentioned before, we kind of split the difference there. Year 1, it looks like $157,000 extra reimbursement, and year 2 is a little lower than
Sure.
Yes.
Can you do me a favor really quick? Can you make a clarifying statement for the record, given our presentation that we did a couple weeks ago about open enrollment, the very type of parameters we have on there, there's a statement, our open enrollment went up. Can you clarify what you meant by that?
Sure. So that the open enrollment number is the number, and I will go 2 slides back. We have it. I know we did the next slide. right there at the bottom. Okay, so that is, you can think of it this way down there. If a student open enrolls out of our district to a different district, that's the amount of money that's passed back and forth, essentially virtually, between those two districts to reimburse for that open enrollment. The same is true if a student transfers into our school district. The reimbursement we get for that has increased. So that number has increased from the previous year's budget. We built into our 5-year budget assumption what we're expecting for open enrollment numbers for next year. And they haven't shrunk that much because we held steady. We just didn't up that number a whole lot. So this is the impact in terms of the reimbursement that happens from students going from one district to another. It is not the exact budget impact related to our open enrollment. We actually expect as we continue to be a growing school district that will actually run out of space to be hurt a little bit by open enrollment. If we year before we actually had more students coming than went out, so it was in some ways a revenue maker for us. We fully expect to get back to even, but that number is flat. And my guess would be that prior to us building a new school, we'll probably be in a negative spot where we are sending more students out than we're taking in, which if you really tease into this, the per pupil revenue limit is not $8,600. You had it off the top of your head. It's next year with 11,000. So what that means is we keep $2,000 of revenue commission every student we still send out. So it isn't a budget breaker for us to send a student out in that.
Thanks for clarification. I also just want to, just so our listeners or how it's reported, I think within the mission issue and additional open enrollment numbers as if we had additional numbers.
Fair enough. I appreciate you clarifying. Yep, those are dollars, not students.
Correct.
Yeah, question.
I just wanted to take that opportunity where you're making the connection between how state aid works and offsets some of our taxing authority. To use that to explain why the estimated impact lines on the state aid pot increase are 0 on the slide previously. Slide 1. I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. Because if you just look at it and say, oh, it's gone up by this. I must have put the slide to the stop. Yeah, this one right here, that right here. That's the issue. That's the yeah. If you're just looking at the numbers, you would think yes, that impact would go up, but because it's money that offsets, it's a 0 impact. I just wanted to said something akin to that 2 slides down. I just wanted to make sure that's clear.
You are 100% correct. And thank you for saying that, because I was going to tell Chad to go back to this slide right before I started talking about aid, because I wanted to bring that up. So, yep. Thank you so much for presenting that for me. Yep. The key number for us is that top number in terms of stretching out what we will eventually have in 10, and then aid kind of fills in the piece. So that is that direction. Any other questions on these? All right. Because aid is so important in terms of what eventually happens with debt management and us managing our taxes. I did want to have Pete talk through, and Pete actually is running a spreadsheet that I think almost breaks Google every day in terms of us estimating what we'll do with aid. And the only way Pete can do that is to actually plug in all the numbers in terms of money spent around the entire state of Wisconsin. And then he has a very complex formula for us to have a decent guess on where we'll end up with aid. We use as many of these types. So Pete, did you want to kind of walk through aid in general?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Chad. And as Chad had pointed out earlier, we saw the state had allowed for an increase in the aid pot. So that's one of the factors that determines how much aid is everyone is going to get, is how much is in the aid pot. But then there's the local factors, local each school district, how they fall into the aid formula. And it's based on those first 3 bullet points up there. It's based on the number of students and the valuation of their property, and finally how much they're spending. So the way the really complex aid formula works is it basically will say that as we look at the next bullet point, the districts with a higher property value per student are going to get less aid. So we have a higher property value than, maybe this is like used below, for an example, we have a higher property value, so therefore the aid formula does not work in our favor, it works in the favor of both those who need that. Oh, this slide, we actually seen this slide a few months ago, so we prepared this a few months ago, and that's the using the 22-23 state aid factors, because we don't know what 23-24 is going to be there, you know, it's some pretty good guesses on that. But one of the things I've determined over the couple of years I've had for working here is where we sit in the aid formula, we are a lot more sensitive to property value increases. Meaning, as our property value goes up more, we're more likely to receive less aid at that time. In fact, that's at a much higher rate. If you look at the two bottom bullet points on there, the spending, if that were increased by 1%, we lose about $160,000. Chad said we're called negatively aided here. So every time we spend money, we actually lose a little bit more. We get a little less, like we need on that. But if our property value increased by 1%, then we're going to lose about $600,000. Right now, our aid pot is around, I think it was $25 million is what we received for the year that just ended. And we're projecting somewhere around 23 million. And as Chad alluded to, I think it's not going to nudge up a little higher for us. It'll be somewhere a little higher than that, and hopefully. But yeah, as we were saying, we're just a little more sensitive when it comes on the property value side.
And I'm hoping we're making sense to the board. I think to attempt to simplify this, the state's rationale for this equalization formula is if our school district picked up $5 million in property value in a given year, that's $5 million of tax base that the taxing burden can be spread to. So we didn't get into this detail today, but a number we're actually watching very closely is net new construction, which means new tax base, new rooftops that didn't exist the year before are now helping share the burden of property taxes in the school district. And that helps us kind of figure out where we want to settle that in terms of what the estimate tax increase will be for the upcoming tax season. Just out of curiosity, what do you use could be a whole nother lesson. Each municipality has a property assessment. Based on their own property assessment. Yes, but these property assessments then are shipped to the state, and the state then puts their own stamp on, and those are called equalized property values. So you have two things going on. One, what your assessment is at the local level. And if you live in a township versus the city of Verona, you might see wildly different property assessments and potentially different property values associated at the local level. And that could be paying for plows in the town of Springdale. For school taxes, you have equalized property values. And those are numbers that are kind of rebooted and redone at the state level to make sure you don't have a local assessor that might only have 40 properties to assess on an annual basis and maybe friends with all of those folks and keep their property assessment at a lower level than what it's actually worth. So it's actually twofold. But school taxes are paid at that equalized level, and the state has their hands on that, not just the local assessor. Thank you. Good question. Other questions? All right, we're getting there. This is our last one. And we don't have to spend a ton of time on this because we just talked through a whole bunch of all the moving numbers that happened related to this. I do want to, as we work our way up through this, remind the board, we're sitting in fiscal year 24. That is column 3. And you can see all of the assumptions we built into this that will likely end up, many of these built into the budget book that Pete and I will pass off to all of you in a couple of weeks. So you can see a few things I wanted to point out on here. ESSER runs out this year.
Again, with past referendum, ESSER is, it's a little bit of a shell game that we're not using ESSER funds necessarily for one-time expenditure, or we are trying to use them for one-time expenditures, not ongoing staffing. You can see right now, we're expecting that levy to increase about 2.5%. You'll see right now, we've got a mill rate set at flat, and there was a pre-referendum promise that we do what we could to keep the mill rate stable. The other line in fiscal year 24 that the board should just take note of is our all in funds relative to major expenses. So we are making a historic investment at this point in these assumptions on that budget line that says steps, new hires, and CPI increase. That is 11.3% in 1 year. That is using the assumption right now, we have settled the best vote for DAEA of a 5% pay increase for all staff. And that number would increase by a percentage every time we went up an additional percent in terms of where we settled. But all in terms of the work we did with profession, the work we did with steps, the 30 new FTE we hired to take care of the class sizes and then the pre-referendum promises, that number sits at 11.3. We are a growing district. We do have record inflation, but that is a big number that isn't sustainable. This can be a one-year blip for us to catch up in terms of what happened with inflation, but that's a big number where it sits right now, and the board should be aware of it. Other questions as we on anything? There's a ton of detail on here, but I know we've been kind of going on with. Any questions on 5-year assumptions?
I have a question, March, Yep. This 2 years from 60 on, is that basically us staying down our.
Is exactly what it is. Yep. And it's a good question. So you can think this is I had Pete balance the budget 26, 27, 28 for us to pay our mandatory debt payments. And that is built into the budget. But if all of these assumptions hold true, and the next 2-year state budget only had a $200 increase in revenue limit, and we spend at 3% with CPI, we start to run a deficit. So one thing to keep in mind was, I believe I saw that $325 per student is only a 2.3% increase in terms of revenue with 8% inflation. Eventually, those numbers don't match up. So then you have to start making some decisions around staffing cuts, or if we increase enrollment in our school district, not higher at the same rate that we would to start to figure out what's going on with class sizes and everything else that we. So we have tools 3 or 4 years down the road to balance that budget, but you are definitely seeing that once that $19 million runs out, we have some decisions to make and start to get those numbers to balance.
Well, also part of that is that you're assuming back down to $200 per pupil increases, which again is the state's way of adjusting for inflation. And so the fact it's not back down or goes to zero and we continue to have inflation,
That number is more secret. No question.
Yep, and if inflation persists higher for longer, we're in a situation where keep down that we're not something. No matter at what point we should ask them more tax or having issues.
Well, Ron Carlos, you were supposed to set up. Yeah.
No.
that's a good question, bro.
We will, we will have, we'll have decisions to make down the road, we think, by the time we get to fiscal year 26. And we have very conservative numbers built into what happens with the next 2-year budget cycle. And by the time you get out to 3 years, 3, 4, and 5 on this, many of these things change. So we will, as we always have, figure it out as a community. And then when you have tough times, there will be many options for us to figure out. How to make sure we put the district in this spot.
But I do want to reiterate, as we've gone through these, budget assumptions, it's always been on a very conservative level, and we've seen how the conservative level, I appreciate it. I like playing it safe with our numbers, but we've pretty much continually seen numbers come in much higher than what were estimated, or within the range, which is helpful for me. That's it.
And that is, it is a good habit for us to get it. Eventually, when we're super reliant, potentially in fiscal year 26, on what happens with the state budget. If we went on a hiring spree saying it's going to be a great state budget, I hired a bunch of new people, and then the state budget is flat and flops, we have a disaster of the fall. So it's better for us to be more conservative this time of year than it is the other way around.
So this is basically just time to get.
It does, yeah. The main reason this one's important is because we do have tools right now with the $19 million referendum to go on a spending spree this year. But then those red numbers are on top of us a year sooner or 2 years sooner. And we have to have long range fiscal planning, keep the levy in a spot that we're not passing that $19 million immediately on the taxpayers. And we have tools for what happens in the next couple of state budgets.
So just to be clear, you're saying that we're not going on a spending spree, and that's why it's pushed out as far as it is.
In my humble opinion, this was a year that we made a significant investment in our classrooms following the past referendum. We had the tools to make 4 or 5 times the investment we did and elected not to, because we want to make sure we're making wise long-range plans.
And these were all promises that we made as we were going through referendum. We made promises to increase FTE, but we also made promises to be as fiduciary, responsible as we could be as we were going through this. So these are in keeping with the promises made.
And then sort of saying that not there yet, the school discussion tells the community, we're not burying our heads in the sand, saying, nah, we can't talk about that yet. It's because we are eyes wide open. We don't. And so just to also reframe putting that at bay is not out of denial. It's about. Need to reprogram.
Last slide, I think we're done. We just wanted to make sure if you take a slide away tonight, this is a good one for the board to take away just to know what's in front of us over the next few months. We had tonight, we were still at the bargaining. Actually, that CPI number will be set in that budget. You get your budget update tonight. We plan on releasing the draft budget book to the board ahead of the August 21st board meeting. So we'll have it a week ahead of time, and we'll present the draft budget on August 21st. We'll open the board, will go through the budget the week prior, come with questions if you have any, and feedback. In between there, we'll get that net new construction number that we talked about. That is important. And then the September 11th board meeting, the board will pass the preliminary budget. That is the budget it will take to the annual meeting on the 25th. You will have your third Friday count in the middle, but we'll still be working through all the numbers on that. And we'll have the annual meeting. And again, that is still passing a preliminary budget by the community because we don't have all our numbers yet. We don't know what we have for students, and we don't know what we have for food. So those are the 2 big things we're going to need to know. October 13th is released, and that gives us 10 days to get a finalized budget put together and present that to the board for initial passing on October 23rd. So we still got a little bit of road ahead of us, but we know way more than we did last time we updated the board with everything. That is it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pete, have a great night. Michelle and
Thanks, Pete.
Sean said
Thank you very
today.
much.
Thank you,
like to see that big Google Sheet in action sometime where you destroy the internet.
The next time you see the power kind of flickers out. That's me. Well, you slowly transition from Excel to Google Docs, because of the ability to collaborate.
Yes, yeah.
But is maxing the capacity of Google Sheets out. He showed me an update and I'm like, I've never seen Google do that. Some weird bot that takes a while for California to generate enough electricity to spend over.
All right, that closes the superintendent report. We'll turn it over to the board for.
Sounds good. Let's see where we're at. So we've taken care of the first two items. Are there any general board updates? One thing I did want to just circle back on, we had, at the meeting, at last meeting, we had a brochure that people should take a look at. I did want to circle back and see if there were any discussions, but I think having Marcy here would be helpful. Because I think if you have one member saying that changes, you don't have just one member driving change, we kind of want the whole board to be on the same page about what we're putting out there. Is this something that we can circle back to at our first August meeting? Will Marcy be here for that?
Yes.
Okay. Does that sound good? Let's see where else. And then the other thing, when we're moving on to future agenda items in a little bit, just again, make sure we're trying to get a workshop on the calendar. So if you haven't had a chance to respond to Lord, and her email, the Google forms for dates, please do so, so we can get that scheduled and on calendar. And then look at the year, it's a little dicey when it comes to scheduling. Any other board updates?
I'm going to actually see two meetings. We'll be 25 minutes. And then the wall.
Thank you for going. Good update. Anything else?
Well, I did actually. There was a solution possession. Design created. Cool. And we just absolutely. That is sort of telling me. And also. Wow. Yeah, it's works. Performance power ups. I even I live in Boston. And so it's really awesome. And I just heard the kids were. Relating them. So. To these classes. So. To see.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Okay, if nothing else, we can move on to public comment. Obviously, there is no public comment. So we can move to superintendent's consent agenda. Has everyone had a chance to look at the consent agenda? Are there any questions? Hearing none. Superintendent's consent agenda has been approved as presented. The board's consent agenda, are there any questions? Hearing none, board's consent agenda has also been approved as presented. Future agenda items, taking a look at our upcoming agenda. Remember, the only thing that's out of the ordinary there would be convocation coming up on August 29th at 7:45 a.m. Okay, and then with that, pull up my whole screen here. We are going to, is there a motion to adjourn to closed session under Wisconsin statute 19.82 sub 1 and sub 2 and 19.85 sub 1 sub E for the purpose of considering negotiation strategy regarding collectively bargaining base wages for VASD bargaining units. Is there a motion? So there's a motion from Jen. Is there a second?
Subject.
There is a second from Corby. All in favor, starting with Joe?
Aye.
Corby?
Aye.
Jen? Aye. John?
Aye.
One opposed?
Aye.
Cool, I think we've lost some polls. Okay, and I as well. We are officially in closed session. Let's take just a couple minutes and we will power down live stream and move on to the session.